To start with, we shall discuss the meaning and concept of evaluation. Evaluation is a concept that has emerged as a prominent process of testing, measuring, assessing and appraising. Evaluation has a wider meaning and goes beyond measurement. The ultimate objective of evaluation is qualitative improvement. It is a process of making value judgment over a level of performance or achievement. In order to find out the level of achievement, it is necessary to make some measurement and decide to what extent that level is satisfactory. Therefore, it can be applied to evaluate the effects of a part over a whole or whole over a part of the program. Thus, evaluation is a systematic process of determining the extent to which educational objectives are achieved. It implies a critical assessment of educative process and its outcome in the light of the objectives. Evaluation is the process of determining the extent to which the objectives are achieved. It is concerned not only with the appraisal of achievement but also with its improvement. It is a continuous and dynamic process which helps in forming the decisions like instructional, curricular, selection, placement of classification as well as personnel. Now, we shall see few definitions of evaluation. A systematic process of determining what the actual outcomes are, but it also involves judgment of desirability of whatever outcomes are demonstrated as given by Travers. The process of ascertaining the decision of concern, selecting appropriate information and collecting and analyzing information in order to report summary data useful to decision makers in selecting among alternatives as given by Alkin. Stufflebeam has given the definition as the process of delineating, obtaining and providing useful information for judging decision alternatives. Now, we shall see various types of evaluation. A proper understanding of types of evaluation will help the teachers in assessing the students. We shall see the various types now. The purpose of formative evaluation is to find out whether after a learning experience, students are able to do what they were previously unable to do. Its ultimate goal is usually to help students perform well at the end of a program. The formative evaluation enables the teachers to draw more reliable inference about his students than an external assessor, although he may not be as objective as the latter. Identify the levels of cognitive process of his students. It also helps the teachers to choose the most suitable teaching techniques and materials and to determine the feasibility of a program within the classroom. The formative evaluation helps the teachers to determine areas needing modifications or improvement in the teaching learning processes and to determine to a greater extent the outcome of summative evaluation. The next type of evaluation is summative evaluation. It often attempts to determine the extent the broad objectives of a program have been achieved, that is, private and public examinations. It is concerned with purposes, progress, and outcomes of the teaching learning process. Summative evaluation is judgmental in nature and often carries threat with it that the student may have no knowledge of the evaluator and failure has far-reaching effect on the students. However, it is more objective than formative evaluation. Now, we shall see some of the underlying assumptions of summative evaluation. The program's objectives are achievable. The teaching-learning process has been conducted efficiently. The teacher-student material interactions have been conducive to learning. The teaching techniques, learning materials, and audio-visual aids are adequate and have been judiciously dispensed, and there is uniformity in classroom conditions for all learners. The next type of evaluation is diagnostic evaluation. It helps in identifying student needs, levels and backgrounds, societal needs and preferences that determine broad goals. It helps in identifying the nature of subject matter and in identifying specific or general objectives that are determined by the psychological and other needs of the students. Diagnostic evaluation helps in diagnosing learning problems in students and the intensity of the problem. It also helps in diagnosing to what extent students are ready for learning experiences as well as to what extent the students can cope with the pace of learning experiences provided. This evaluation also diagnoses how the individual differences with the group can be tackled. Next is remedial evaluation. It is undertaken to make alterations or modifications to check certain deficiencies in the course. For example, improvement of instructional strategies, adoption of methods and procedures to improve slow learners, to improve reading comprehension and to improve upon the skill learning in students. The next type of evaluations are internal and external evaluation. Internal evaluation is used in the assessment and appraisal of students' cognitive, affective and psychomotor abilities. The continuous process of internal evaluation is the total awareness of a teacher to identify the aspects of student development. Internal evaluation is continuous, periodic and an internal process. This means that assessment is done in relation to certain abilities and skills in certain subject areas periodically and continuously. Internal evaluation results should be analyzed and used for improvement of the whole system, which includes teaching, learning as well as evaluation. The next one is external evaluation. It is useful in maintaining the standards. Keeping certain criteria, it compares and validates the program or a course. External evaluation also helps in promoting and certifying the students based on their achievement or performance. Evaluation is an ongoing process and its importance holds good for education of visually impaired child too. So, evaluation is required to assess the pace of students' progress, identify learning problems and taking teaching related decisions. It assesses immediate teaching outcomes on a continuous basis as well as at the end of a term, grade or a stage of education. It assesses the progress in a full academic session. Like any other child, a visually impaired child's education aims at learning of language, science, mathematics and social sciences. Some very important and interesting factors need to be taken care during the evaluation of learning of concepts in science and social sciences. Evaluation helps in diagnosing the difficulties of students in learning certain abstract concepts. Science is one of the critical content areas in the academic curriculum. In most cases, the special teacher of students with visual impairment collaborates with general education teachers and content area specialists to ensure that students with visual impairment benefit from the classroom instruction. The specialist in visual impairment provides adapted materials and equipments and teaches special skills prior to their use in the classroom. The teacher of students with visual impairment also provides information to the content teachers of modification in the presentation of the material. He or she makes suggestions on ways to ensure the inclusion of students in all aspects of the class and on ways to make learning as rewarding for the students who are visually impaired as it is for other students. Although science is practical subject, teaching and learning occurs through a medium of instruction, both spoken and written. Development of science process skills may pose some challenges to visually impaired children given their loss of sight. They learn some concepts abstractly. They have unique deficiencies which, if not well addressed, can prevent them from attaining their life expectations. The teacher is encouraged to use specific objectives to evaluate learners. For teaching of science to visually impaired students, certain adaptations and modifications are made by providing the students special opportunities for tactually exploring the materials and diagrams, by prior explanation of or follow-up information, by taking them to the field trips and enjoying first-hand information, by allowing them to do experiments in the laboratory, by teaching chemical notations. And it has been proved beyond doubt that though a little difficult task, teaching of physical and biological sciences should not be ruled out for visually impaired students. A little bit adaptation of methods and materials makes it a subject of interest and mastery for younger visually impaired children to grown-ups. Likewise, in case of evaluation of learning in science, certain modifications as well as adaptations are required in the modes of questioning and modes of answering. This principle works very well in case of theory as well as practical papers and equally applies for all the science subjects, whether it is physics, chemistry, zoology or botany. Students with visual impairment may complete a task or present information in a variety of ways, and examinations can pose considerable difficulty for the students with low vision. Examination results should reflect the student's knowledge of the subject content. Each student's individual needs require consideration. These students may take more time to complete an assignment or examination than other students. Due consideration should be given to the student's well-being when assigning homework, particularly if it requires extensive reading or writing. A student with low vision is often fatigued by the end of the school day and work quality may be reduced. Such students may require additional time for homework assignments, decreased length of tests and assignments, extended time frames for test taking, tests and exams in alternative format such as in large print, braille or an audio tape or CD. Reading or scribing by a teacher, volunteer, student assistant or peers. Some of the strategies we are going to discuss now will enhance the work quality. Allow additional time for completion of assignments and examination. Allow the student to complete an examination in more than one sitting if necessary. Reduce the number of examples required to demonstrate the student's understanding of a concept or mathematical operation. Reduce the number of questions to be answered. Provide an alternative way of testing the student's knowledge. Provide a scribe. Give the examination orally. Accept a computer printout or answers recorded on an audio cassette. To make the best use of their education, students need to be responsible for all classroom and homework assignments. additional time, or alternatives to visual tasks may be important modifications for students with visual impairment. Different types of accommodations and modifications can help students with visual impairment take their class tests along with their sighted classmates to have the same opportunity as the rest of class to complete all the items on his class test and to take the test independently. He or she will need to be allotted more time than the other students, or he or she will need scribe arrangement. Although testing has always been a major part of education, the recent emphasis on school-wide testing aimed at raising educational standards in countries such as United States necessitates that educators develop appropriate alternative testing formats for norm reference testing. The need for more research and development in alternative forms of assessment for students with visual disabilities was one of the recommendations made by the Working Conference on Science for Persons with Disabilities held in 1993 and 1994. Alternative format testing and follow through on assessment to ensure equity for visually impaired students are needed reforms, as given by Eggleston and Dodd during 1994. Science teachers should exercise caution in assessing students with visual impairment using carefully prepared tests and be willing to make necessary changes in their assessment criteria and procedures. Teachers should consider using formative, hands-on assessment tasks if standardized testing procedures for the visually impaired students in a particular science topic are lacking. Effort should be made to develop hands-on forms of adaptive tests similar to the computerized versions so that assessment can be tailored to determine what the individual student knows or does not know about the particular topic. Assessment should not be used as a punitive measure. Instead, it should be considered as a vehicle for helping the students evaluate their strengths and weaknesses. One very important point that teachers should keep in mind when testing students with visual impairment is making sure that test results reflect their knowledge and skills, not their disabilities. Science educators should address alternative assessment methods for students with visual impairment in pre-service teacher education. Often, tests may have been well written but constructed in a way that results in problems for students with visual impairment. For example, if someone has difficulty reading test question papers that are visually cluttered, teachers should use triple spacing between test items, extra space between lines, and allow wider margins. Other suggestions for test construction include the use of symmetrical spacing. For example, when using multiple choice tests, align possible responses vertically rather than horizontally on the same page and permit students to circle the letter of the correct answer. When implementing essay questions, dictated or taped responses for students with visual impairment should be allowed. Also, teachers should consider color coding, underlining, enlarging, or highlighting keywords and symbols. Students can be involved in the assessment process through the use of such student-centered assessment strategies as portfolios, journals and learning logs, think alouds, and self-evaluation questionnaires and interviews. These assessment strategies provide students with opportunities to monitor their progress, evaluate their understanding, and gain insights into the ways they approach and think about science. Portfolios are archival in nature and consist of student products selected by both students and teachers over a period of time. Portfolios are continuously examined by students, educators, and families to reflect upon and document the students' growth, effort, attitudes, and the processes they use to learn science. The question papers can be provided in Braille and answers can also be obtained in Braille. The question paper can be given in print and read for the blind candidate by a scribe. Answers are spoken by the blind child to the scribe, who in turn writes the answers in the answer sheet. The question may be recorded on an audio cassette and answers can also be recorded by the blind candidate on a cassette. The questions may be asked orally by the examiner and answers may also be given orally. For low vision candidates, the question paper should be provided in large print material. For evaluation in the diagram part, the visually impaired students may be asked to narrate verbally the answers to the questions which warrant diagrams. Instead of drawing the diagram, the visually impaired students should be expected to describe the procedure for drawing it. Marks should be awarded to the child for answering such questions in this substituted way. In the evaluation of practical in all the science subjects including physics, chemistry, zoology and botany, the same principle can be applied which is applicable for the diagrams. Safety should be ensured for all the students working in laboratories. Additional precautions can further reduce the risk of hazards for visually impaired students. At the high school level, usually children do experiments in groups. While one child performs the experiment, another child is engaged in recording the result, yet another is engaged in observing the experiment. The children put all the facts together and present the experiment report. A visually impaired child is the member of such team and shares the responsibility suitable to them. During the examination, the evaluation of experimental work of a visually impaired student can be done in the similar way. Today we have discussed the various adaptations and modifications in the evaluation procedures while evaluating the practical components of students with visual impairment. Thank you.